I am old now. My scales have lost their shine and my eyes do not see as well as they once did, but I remember everything. I remember the humans. The young cadets sit before me today, eager and foolish, ready to take their posts among the stars. They think they understand the galaxy. They think they know what waits for them out there. But they do not know about humans, not truly. And so I will tell them. I will tell them the horrifying stories from my time on the human. Perhaps then they will understand why I still wake in the night, shaking. My name is. I served as a diplomatic observer during the Frontier War. I was stationed among humans for 3 cycles. What I witnessed changed me forever. Let me tell you about the first horror. It happened on the moon called 4. The humans had been fighting the collective for control of that worthless rock for months. I was there to observe and report back to the council. I watched from a monitoring post on a ridge above the battlefield. I had a clear view of everything that happened that day. The battle was over. The humans had won, but at a terrible cost. I counted the bodies through my viewing lens. 3 humans lay dead in the mud below. 7 more were wounded. They were retreating, but they had left behind dozens of soldiers in the valley. It would be suicide to go down there. Lieutenant Danny Vance was the human in charge. I had studied him during my time with the unit. He was a calm male in his early 30s with a quiet voice and steady hands. He never raised his voice, even when giving orders. The other humans trusted him completely. I watched Danny Vance look down at the valley where his dead soldiers lay. They were regrouping on the far side. Any sensible commander would retreat. The mission was complete. The dead were dead. There was no logical reason to risk more lives for bodies that could no longer feel anything. Danny Vance turned to his soldiers. "We are not leaving them," he said. I adjusted my listening device, certain I had misheard. Corporal Maria Santos stepped forward. She was the unit's medic, a small female with dark hair and fierce eyes. She had been treating the wounded, but now she stood beside her lieutenant. "I will carry Rico myself," she said. "He was my friend." "This is madness," I whispered to myself. Private Leo Harper was barely 20 years old. He had taken a piece of metal in his leg during the battle. He could barely walk. But when Danny Vance asked for volunteers to recover the dead, Leo Harper raised his hand. "Sir, I can still shoot," he said. "I will cover you." They moved down into the valley, all of them, even the wounded. They left no one behind on that ridge except me. I watched through my lens as they entered the kill zone. I saw them coming. The enemy soldiers began to move, sensing easy prey. I counted at least 40 against a dozen wounded humans. Danny Vance did not hesitate. He led his people straight toward the fallen soldiers. Maria Santos reached the first body and lifted it onto her shoulders. The dead human was twice her size. She should not have been able to carry him, but she did. They attacked. What happened next still haunts me. The humans fought like nothing I had ever seen. They were wounded, exhausted, and outnumbered. But they would not stop. They would not retreat. Danny Vance stood over the bodies of his fallen soldiers and fired his weapon until it was empty. Then he picked up a dead soldier's weapon and kept firing. Leo Harper, with metal still in his leg, dragged himself across the ground to reach another fallen human. He grabbed the body by the arms and pulled. He screamed in pain with every movement, but he did not let go. Maria Santos carried her dead friend for 6 kilometers through that valley. 6 kilometers, with firing at her the entire way. She fell twice. Both times she got back up. She never dropped the body. 2 more humans died during the retrieval. 2 more lives lost for soldiers who were already gone. By any logical measure, this was a failure. The mission cost more than it gained. The mathematics were simple. But the humans did not care about mathematics. When it was over, Danny Vance gathered his surviving soldiers on the ridge. They were bleeding, broken, and exhausted, but they had every single fallen soldier with them. Every single one. I approached Danny Vance afterward. I had to understand. "Lieutenant," I said, "why did you do this? Your fallen soldiers were dead. They could not feel anything. They could not thank you. You lost 2 more soldiers for bodies. This makes no sense." Danny Vance looked at me with his strange human eyes. They were wet. I later learned this meant he was experiencing strong emotions. "They were not just bodies," he said. "They were my people. They had families waiting for them back home, mothers and fathers, wives and children. Those families deserve to bury their sons and daughters properly. They deserve to say goodbye." "But the dead cannot know if they are buried or not," I said. Danny Vance smiled. It was a sad smile. "The dead cannot know," he agreed, "but the living can, and the living need to know that if they fall they will not be forgotten. They will not be left behind. That is what holds us together, observer. That is what makes us human." I did not understand then. How could I? My species leaves our dead where they fall. It is logical, it is efficient. The dead do not care. But humans are not logical. They are not efficient. They care about things that should not matter. They risk everything for people who cannot thank them. They carry their dead across battlefields because the living need to believe that their lives have meaning. This was my first horror. And I know what you are thinking, young cadets. You are thinking that this does not sound so terrible. You are thinking that this sounds almost noble. Wait, listen to the rest of my stories. And then tell me if you still feel safe among humans. Tell me if you can sleep peacefully knowing that such creatures exist in our galaxy. Because I cannot. And I have not slept peacefully since 4. The second horror came 6 months after 4. I had requested a transfer away from the hopping to escape the madness I had witnessed. Instead, the council sent me to a human colony world called New Montana. They said it would be peaceful there. They said I could rest and recover. They were wrong. New Montana was a refugee processing station. Thousands of displaced beings from dozens of species passed through its gates every week. The humans had built it to help those who had lost everything in the frontier war, even their enemies. I arrived during the aftermath of a major offensive against the swarm. The humans had destroyed a hive ship in orbit above the colony. It was a great victory. They had been terrorizing this sector for years, killing thousands of innocent beings. Their warriors were savage creatures that showed no mercy. They did not take prisoners. They did not negotiate. When the hive ship fell, everyone celebrated. The monster was dead. The threat was over. But then the human survey teams found something in the wreckage. Larvae, hundreds of larvae, sealed in protective pods that had survived the explosion. The young of the enemy, helpless and alone, floating in the debris field. I was present when Captain Cole received the report. She was the station commander, a human female in her 50s with gray hair and hard eyes. I had heard stories about her. She had lost her bonded partner to a raid 3 years earlier. She had more reason to hate them than almost anyone. "How many larvae?" she asked. 347, the officer replied. "All viable. They will mature into warriors within 2 cycles if they survive." I knew what would happen next. Every species in the galaxy followed the same protocol when dealing with enemy young. You destroyed them. It was logical. It was necessary. Those larvae would grow into killers. They would murder innocent beings. Eliminating them now would save countless lives in the future. Cole was silent for a long moment. Then she said something that made my blood freeze. "Bring them to the surface, gently. I want those pods handled with care." I stepped forward. "Captain Cole, I must object. Standard galactic protocol requires the destruction of enemy young during wartime. The larvae represent a future threat. Allowing them to survive is illogical." Cole turned those hard eyes toward me. "Observer, I did not ask for your opinion. Those are children floating up there. Children. I do not care whose children they are." "They are the children of monsters," I said. "They will become monsters themselves." "Maybe," she said. "Or maybe they will become something else. That is not my decision to make. My decision is whether to kill Bobbies today, and I will not. The larvae were brought to the surface. I watched in disbelief as human soldiers carried the pods with gentle hands. These same soldiers had lost friends to the. These same soldiers had seen what warriors did to prisoners. Yet they touched those pods like they were holding their own young. Sergeant Pete was assigned to guard the larvae storage facility. He was a large male with scars on his face and anger in his eyes. I had read his file. His entire platoon had been killed at a battle called Red Ridge. He had been the only survivor. He had crawled through the bodies of his friends for 3 days before rescue arrived. This male of all males should have wanted those larvae dead. Instead, he stood outside their door with his weapon ready, protecting them from anyone who might try to harm them. I approached him one night. "Sergeant, I do not understand. They killed your friends. They murdered your entire unit. How can you protect their young?" Pete did not look at me. He kept his eyes on the horizon, watching for threats. "You are right," he said. "They took everything from me. I dream about Red Ridge every night. I wake up screaming sometimes." "Then why protect their children?" He finally turned to face me. His eyes were wet like Danny Vance's had been on 4. "Because they are children. They did not kill my friends. They did not choose to be born, and if I kill Bobbies because of what their parents did, then I become the monster. Then the win." I could not respond. Doctor was the assigned to study the larvae. She was a young female with kind eyes and a soft voice. She spent hours with the larvae each day, monitoring their health, adjusting their nutrient supplies, talking to them even though they could not understand. "Why do you speak to them?" I asked her once. "They are not conscious yet, they cannot hear you." Smiled. "Studies show that many species respond to sound even before full consciousness develops, and even if they cannot hear me, it helps me remember that they are living beings, not specimens, not threats, children." "They will grow into warriors," I said. "They will kill." "Perhaps," she said, "or perhaps they will grow into something new. No one has ever tried to raise outside the swarm. No one has ever shown them kindness. How do we know what they might become if given the chance?" The humans built a nursery for those larvae. They assigned caretakers. They developed special nutrition formulas. They treated the children of their enemies with more care than most species treat their own young. This was my second horror, young cadets. Humans can kill without mercy when they must. Their warriors are fierce and terrible, but those same warriors will turn around and nurture the Bobbies of the creatures they just defeated in battle. Do you understand how terrifying this is? Do you see the contradiction? I would destroy the enemy young and sleep peacefully. I would eat the larvae and call it victory. Every logical species in the galaxy would eliminate the threat. But humans are not logical. They see a baby and they cannot kill it, even if that baby will someday grow into a monster. They would rather risk their own future than harm a child. I asked Captain Cole about this before I left New Montana. I had to understand. "How do you live with such contradiction?" I said. "You kill warriors without hesitation, but you cannot harm larvae. This is not consistent." Cole poured herself a drink. Her hands were tired. Her eyes were sad. "Consistency is easy," she said. "Anyone can be consistent. You just pick a rule and follow it forever, but life is not consistent. Life is complicated. And being human means holding 2 truths at the same time. Yes, they are our enemies. Yes, their warriors would kill us without a second thought. But also those larvae are innocent. They have not hurt anyone yet. And I will not become someone who murders innocents, no matter how logical it might be." She finished her drink. "That is what separates us from them, observer. Not our weapons, not our ships, our ability to show mercy even when mercy makes no sense." I left New Montana more frightened than when I arrived. Because Cole was right. That is exactly what separates humans from everyone else. And that is exactly why they are so dangerous. The third horror nearly killed me. I was aboard the human medical frigate Resolute Dawn when they found us. We were transporting 300 wounded soldiers from to a hospital station. The ship had no weapons. It was marked with the universal symbols for medical vessels. Every civilized species in the galaxy respected those symbols. They were not civilized. Their torpedo hit us without warning. The explosion tore through the lower decks and killed 40 people instantly. The engines died. The lights went dark. We were left drifting in empty space, bleeding and broken. Commander Nora was on the bridge when the torpedo struck. A falling beam crushed her legs. The ship's medical officer said she would never walk again. The damage to her spine was too severe. When I reached the bridge, I expected to find chaos. I expected to find humans screaming and crying and preparing to surrender. That is what any logical species would do in this situation. We were crippled, unarmed, and outnumbered. The hunter pack circling our ship had 3 fast attack vessels. They could destroy us whenever they wanted. Instead, I found Commander Nora sitting in her captain's chair, giving orders. Her legs were useless beneath her. Blood soaked through the bandages around her waist. The pain must have been unbearable, but her voice was steady and calm. "Status report," she said. "Engines are gone, Commander," someone answered. "We have emergency power only. Life support will last approximately 30 hours. They are holding position at 200 kilometers. "Why are they not attacking?" Nora asked. "Unknown. Perhaps they are waiting for reinforcements. Perhaps they want us to suffer." Nora nodded slowly. "Then we use the time they give us. Chief Engineer, what can you give me?" Carlos limped onto the bridge. He was the ship's chief engineer, a large male with kind eyes and clever hands. The torpedo explosion had burned nearly half his body. His skin was red and blistered. He should have been in the medical bay, unconscious from the pain. Instead, he was working. "The engines are destroyed," Carlos said, "but I can rig the reactor to overload on your command. If they try to board us, we can take them with us." "A suicide option," Nora said. "Yes, Commander, a final option, but I would prefer not to use it." "Agreed, what else?" Carlos smiled through his pain. "I have been thinking, we cannot run, we cannot fight, but maybe we can pretend to fight. If I route power to certain systems, I can make our sensor profile look like an armed cruiser instead of a medical frigate." "Can they tell the difference?" "Not at this distance, not without getting closer, and if they get closer, they risk whatever weapons they think we have." Nora turned to her communications officer. Ensign Molly Grant was young, barely out of the academy. Her right arm was shattered, held together by a temporary cast. She was crying silently from the pain, but she had not left her station. "Ensign Grant, can you broadcast a false weapons signature?" Molly wiped her tears with her good hand. "Yes, Commander. I can make it look like we are charging torpedo tubes. I can make it look like we have fighters in our landing bay. I can make them think twice before approaching." "Do it." I watched in disbelief. These humans were broken. Their commander could not walk. Their engineer was burned beyond recognition. Their communications officer was barely conscious from pain. The entire crew was wounded, exhausted, and dying. And they were planning to fight. "Commander," I said, "this is madness. You cannot win. You have no weapons. Your ship cannot move. Surrender is the only logical option. They may take prisoners. Some of you might survive." Nora looked at me. Her face was pale from blood loss. Her eyes were bright with fever, but her voice was cold and hard. "Observer, there are 300 wounded soldiers on this ship, men and women who fought for the Alliance. They trusted us to bring them home. I will not hand them over to be tortured and killed. I will not surrender while any of my crew can still draw breath." "But you cannot win," I repeated. "Maybe not," she said, "but I can make the pay for every life they take. I can buy time for rescue ships to reach us, and I can die on my feet instead of on my knees." The next 18 hours were the longest of my life. Carlos worked through the night, rerouting power systems and rigging false weapon signatures. His burns wept fluid. His hands shook with pain, but he did not stop. Molly Grant broadcast false signals with one hand while her broken arm hung useless at her side. She created phantom fighter squadrons that did not exist. She simulated torpedo launches that never happened. She made the afraid of a ship that could not hurt them. Nora never left her chair. She could not leave her chair, but she commanded her ship with absolute authority. She spoke to every wounded soldier personally over the communications system. She told them help was coming. She told them to hold on. They circled us like predators, but they did not attack. The false signals made them cautious. They waited for their reinforcements instead of risking a battle with what they thought was an armed cruiser. We held them for 18 hours. 18 hours of pain and fear and defiance. 18 hours of wounded humans refusing to give up. When the rescue ships finally arrived, they fled. They had waited too long. Their reinforcements never came. Commander Nora passed out from blood loss moments after the rescue ships docked. She survived, but she never walked again. Carlos spent 6 months in a burn recovery unit. Molly Grant's arm was saved, though she lost partial use of her fingers. But 300 wounded soldiers went home to their families. 300 lives were saved because broken humans refused to surrender. This is my third horror, young cadets. Humans do not stop fighting when they are wounded. They do not stop fighting when they are outnumbered. They do not stop fighting when logic and reason demand surrender. They fight until their bodies fail them completely. They fight until their hearts stop beating. They fight because giving up is simply not something they understand. I have seen many species in my long life. I have studied warriors from 100 worlds. None of them frighten me like humans do. Because you can break a human's body, you can burn them, you can shatter their bones, you can take everything from them. And they will still find a way to fight. They will still find a way to win. After the Resolute Dawn, I began having nightmares. I still have them. I dream of those broken humans standing at their posts, bleeding and burning, refusing to fall. And I wake up afraid. Because if humans can do that when they are wounded and alone and dying, what can they do when they are whole and strong and fighting together? I do not want to find out. And neither should you. The fourth horror broke something inside me. It happened 5 years after the Frontier War ended. The killing had stopped, but the hatred remained. Every species in the Alliance had lost something to the collective: ships, colonies, loved ones. The wounds were fresh and bleeding. I was assigned to the diplomatic summit on Axis 7, a neutral station at the edge of known space. The purpose of the summit was simple: negotiate a permanent peace with the. Most species sent their diplomats expecting the talks to fail. How could there be peace after so much death? How could anyone sit across from the creatures who had murdered their families and speak of treaties and trade agreements? The humans sent Ambassador Grace Porter. I knew her story. Everyone knew her story. Grace Porter had lost her only son in the war. He had been a young officer aboard a transport ship. They had captured that ship and broadcast what they did to the crew. They wanted to demoralize the humans. They wanted to show them what happened to their prisoners. Grace Porter had watched her son die screaming. The video was still available on certain networks. Some beings watched it for entertainment. This was the woman the humans sent to negotiate peace. Colonel Ben Torres was her security chief. He was a large male with cold eyes and scars on his hands. He had spent 2 years in a prison camp. The things they did to him there had left marks that no doctor could heal. He walked with a limp because they had broken his legs repeatedly and let them heal wrong as a form of torture. This was the man assigned to protect the human delegation. Jenny Marsh was the civilian advisor. She had been a scientist before the war, studying deep space phenomena. They had captured her research station and interrogated her for months, trying to extract military secrets she did not have. They had used chemicals and blades and things I do not want to describe. She still wore long sleeves to hide the scars on her arms. This was the woman who would help shape the peace agreement. I watched these three humans enter the negotiation chamber and I felt sick. These were not diplomats. These were victims. They had every reason to want revenge. They had every right to demand blood. The delegation showed no respect. They knew who they were facing. They knew what they had done to these humans, and they did not care. Their lead negotiator, a creature called, actually smiled when Grace Porter entered the room. Ambassador Porter said, "I believe I knew your son." He was quite loud at the end. The room went silent. Every diplomat from every species held their breath. We all expected violence. We all expected Grace Porter to draw a weapon or scream or storm out of the room. Instead, she sat down. "Yes," she said. "He was a loud boy. He laughed loudly. He loved loudly. And I am sure he died loudly because that is who he was." Seemed confused. This was not the reaction they had expected. "You do not wish to avenge him?" asked. Grace Porter looked at the negotiator. Her eyes were calm. Her hands were steady. "I think about vengeance every day," she said. "I dream about what I would like to do to you and everyone like you. Some nights, those dreams are the only thing that brings me comfort." "Then why are you here? Why negotiate peace when you could continue the war?" Grace Porter was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was soft. "Because my son did not die so that I could spend the rest of my life hatting. He died because we were at war. And the only way to make his death mean something is to end that war, to build something better, to make sure no other mother has to watch her child die screaming." She opened her folder and spread documents across the table. "So here is what we propose: full diplomatic relations, trade agreements, cultural exchanges, a joint commission to investigate war crimes on both sides, reparations programs for affected families, and a commitment from both our peoples to never do this again." I could not believe what I was hearing. The humans had won the war. They had the stronger position. They could have demanded territory, resources, prisoners, anything they wanted. They were desperate for peace. They would have agreed to harsh terms. Instead, the humans offered partnership. Colonel Ben Tor stood behind his ambassador, his hands folded at his waist. His eyes never left the delegation. I knew he was thinking about the prison camp. I knew he was thinking about his broken legs and the screams of his fellow prisoners. But he said nothing. He let his ambassador speak for humanity. Jenny Marsh sat beside Grace Porter, taking notes with hands that still shook from what had been done to them. She could have demanded justice for her suffering. She could have named the who had tortured her and demanded their execution. Instead, she focused on the future. The negotiations took 3 weeks. There were arguments. There were moments when it seemed like everything would fall apart. But Grace Porter never lost her composure. She never raised her voice. She never threatened. And in the end, they signed the treaty. I approached Grace Porter on the final day of the summit. I had to understand. "Ambassador, I have watched you for 3 weeks. You have shown nothing but kindness to the beings who murdered your son. How is this possible? How can you forgive the unforgivable?" Grace Porter looked out the window at the stars. "I have not forgiven them," she said. "I do not think I ever will. Forgiveness is a gift, and some things are too terrible to be forgiven." "Then how can you negotiate peace with them?" "Because peace is not about forgiveness. Peace is about choice. I can choose to hate the forever. I can choose to keep fighting until one of our species is destroyed. Or I can choose to build something new, something better, something that my son would have been proud of." She turned to face me. "They took my son. They cannot take anything else from me because I will not let them. They do not get to turn me into a monster. They do not get to make me into someone who chooses war over peace, hatred over hope. That is my victory, observer, not the treaty, not the trade agreements. My victory is that they did not break me. I left Axis 7 changed forever. This is my fourth horror, young cadets. Humans can endure unimaginable suffering. They can watch their children die. They can be tortured and broken and destroyed. And then they can choose mercy. Not because they have forgotten what was done to them, not because they have forgiven, but because they refuse to let their pain define them. They refuse to become the thing they hate. I have seen many terrible things in my life. I have witnessed battles and massacres and horrors beyond description. But nothing frightens me more than a human who has been hurt beyond measure and still chooses kindness. Because that kind of strength is not natural. That kind of mercy is not logical. And any species capable of that is capable of anything. And now we come to the end, young cadets. You have heard my stories. You have listened to my warnings about the humans. Perhaps you think you understand now. Perhaps you think you are ready. You are not. Because I have not told you the worst horror. I have not told you the thing that truly makes humans dangerous. Let me tell you what happened after the war, after the battles and the treaties and the peace. My bonded partner, Ra, became ill. It was a rare disease that affected our species once in 1,000 generations. Our own doctors had no cure. They told me Ra would be dead within a cycle. There was nothing to be done. I sent messages to every medical facility in space. I contacted specialists from a dozen worlds. Everyone said the same thing. The disease was too rare. There was no treatment. I should prepare for death. Then the humans found out. I do not know how they learned about Ra's illness. I had not told them. I had not asked for their help. After everything I had witnessed, I was still afraid of humans. I did not want to owe them anything. But a human doctor named Adams contacted me 3 days after the diagnosis. She worked at a research hospital on Earth. She said she had heard about the disease and wanted to help. Why? I asked her. This illness affects only. It has nothing to do with your species. There is no benefit to you. Adams smiled at me through the communication screen. Observer, you spent 3 years among us. You watched our people fight and die. You may not consider yourself our friend, but we consider you ours, and friends help each other. The humans worked for 4 months. Adams assembled a team of 17 researchers. They studied biology. They analyzed the disease. They ran thousands of experiments. They did not ask for payment. They did not ask for favors. They did not ask for anything at all. On the 93rd day, Adams contacted me again. We found it, she said. We found a treatment. It is not a cure, but it will stop the disease from progressing. Ra will live. My bonded partner survived. We had another 12 years together before Ra passed peacefully in sleep. 12 years I would not have had without human kindness. I still do not understand why they helped me. But that is not the only story. When Ra finally died, I was alone. We had no children. My family was gone. I sat in our empty home and felt nothing but grief. The humans came to me. They had learned about mourning rituals. Our traditions require specific songs and ceremonies that must be performed by community members. Without community, a cannot properly mourn. The spirit of the lost one becomes trapped. I had no community. I had only myself. But the humans came. 12 of them from various places I had been stationed during the war. They had studied our mourning rituals. They had learned the songs. They had practiced the ceremonies. They performed them for me. The songs were not perfect. Their pronunciation was strange, but they had tried. They had learned an alien tradition just so I would not have to mourn alone. I wept for 3 days, and for the first time since Ra's death I felt peace. There is one more story. Do you remember Danny Vance from my first horror? The lieutenant who refused to leave his dead soldiers on 4. He is a general now, old like me. He commands an entire fleet. But every year, on the anniversary of 4, he sends me a message. The first message came the year after the battle. It said, "I have not forgotten the who died alongside us that day. Their names are spoken at our memorial ceremony. They are honored as our brothers." He has sent that message every year for 30 years. I have never asked him to do this. I have never thanked him. We have not spoken since that day on the battlefield. But he remembers, and he makes sure that I know he remembers. Young cadets, I have called these stories horrors. I have told you that humans are terrifying, and everything I said was true. But I have not been honest about why they frighten me. It is not because they carry their dead. It is not because they adopt enemy children. It is not because they fight when broken or forgive when wronged. It is because of what they do to you. Humans change you. Before I met them, I was a proper. I believed in logic and efficiency. I believed that the dead were dead, and the enemy was the enemy, and weakness was something to be hidden. The humans took those beliefs and showed me how small they were. They showed me that loyalty matters more than logic. They showed me that mercy matters more than victory. They showed me that there is strength in kindness and power in forgiveness. They infected me with hope. And once you have hope, you cannot go back. You cannot return to the cold, sensible galaxy where everyone follows the rules and no one risks anything for anyone else. You become something new, something strange, something human. That is the real horror, young cadets. That is what I am warning you about. You will go among the humans. You will observe them and study them and think you understand them. And then one day, you will find yourself carrying a wounded human to safety, even though it makes no logical sense. You will find yourself defending an enemy child, even though it puts you at risk. You will find yourself choosing mercy over revenge, hope over despair. And you will realize that you have become something your ancestors would not recognize. Is this a warning? Yes. Is this a horror story? Perhaps. But I will tell you a secret, young ones, a secret I have never told anyone. I am glad the humans changed me. I am glad I learned to hope. I am glad I carry Ra's memory in my heart and feel the warmth of human friendship even across the cold distances of space. The galaxy is dark and vast and full of species who care nothing for each other, but the humans refuse to accept that darkness. They light fires wherever they go. They build bridges between strangers. They teach us that we can be more than our biology demands. Is that terrifying? Yes. But it is also beautiful. Go among the humans, young cadets. Let them change you. Let them teach you about loyalty and courage and mercy. And someday, when you are old like me, you will tell your own horror stories. And you will smile when you tell them. Because the greatest horror is also the greatest gift. The humans made us believe in something better. And we will never be the same.